Did you ever get pulled into one of those endless meetings that never seem to get anything accomplished? Sometimes you feel like you get tricked into attending, like in this Career Builders commercial.
Hey, look, donuts.
Wait, you don't want those donuts.
Yeah, I do.
Ooh. They use them as bait to trap people into pointless meetings.
Oh, that's cruel. Hey, ice cream cake.
Glad you could make it, Todd. So
I'll see you in about 8 hours.
Once you're there, you know what's next. Listening to people who can be difficult to deal with, like the rambler, the multitasker, the dominator. Dana Brownlee is the President of Professionalism Matters, and she's here to give us some techniques for managing difficult meeting personalities. Welcome.
Thank you, Carol.
I can't wait to hear your solutions to these problems. But first, let's talk about the types of people in these meetings that drive us all crazy. The first, the rambler.
I think every meeting has the rambler. It's that person who goes on and on. They're giving you the War and Peace version when you really want the Cliff Notes version.
So how do you make them stop?
Several things you can do. One technique that I really like, ask them to summarize their point for the meeting notes. It's an opportunity to compliment them, but also speed them up. So you might say, you know, Jill, you're making some really great points, but I'm worried we might not capture them correctly. Could you just boil it down to one phrase for us? So that speeds them up.
So the best advice wouldn't be, please shut up now. I'm just kidding. I've never done that, but I've always wanted to. It's a fantasy that I have. Okay, so the next person is the multitasker. And what do they do at meetings that drive us crazy?
Well, the multitasker, not only are we frustrated with them, but we've all been the multitasker. That's the person that's on their PDA, they're on their iPad. So
that's me.
That's all of us. So one of the things we can do is try to develop a ground rule right at the beginning. Don't just ignore the problem, but bring it up and say, hey guys, I know that we're all busy, we're all trying to check our email, text messages. Let's develop some sort of ground rule about how we're going to handle devices in our session.
So do you say the person's name like, hey Joe, listen?
That's another recommendation, actually, yeah.
Oh.
You can also kind of call them out and you can say, hey, Bob, what are your thoughts on this point? And it not only startles them and gets them back engaged in the meeting, but it also sends a signal to everybody else that they really do need to focus.
Interesting. Okay, the dominator.
Yes, a lot of times we're so afraid of the dominator. That's the person that's sucking up all the wind in the room, and they're, you know, really dominating and not letting other people get a word in edgewise. Lots of things you can do. One technique I highly recommend, I call compliment, document, then pivot. And so that's exactly what you're going to do. So you might say, well, Carol, these are some really great points you're bringing up. This inventory issue, I hadn't really thought about that. Let me be sure we get that down on our flip chart. And I'm also wondering, Mark and Greg, what are your thoughts on the inventory issue? And do you have any other suggestions as well?
So you interrupt that dominating person.
Yes, but I usually try to interrupt with something positive. It's a complimentary statement.
You're so much nicer than I am. Okay, so meetings in general, because I have found that most meetings are pointless. And maybe it's my imagination and I'm just like too hyperactive to actually sit down for an hour and listen to a bunch of people talk, but honestly.
No, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. And actually, it's funny. In my training class, when I'm teaching people how to prepare for their meetings, I tell them to ask the who, what, why, where, and when. But I say ask the why question first. Because if you really can't convince yourself that you really do need to have a meeting, you don't need to have it.
So why do people have so many meetings? I mean, why do businesses require so many meetings then?
I don't know that they're requiring them, but honestly, I think that in some ways we've gotten a little lazy. I think people have problems and issues, and instead of figuring out the best way to tackle it, they say, oh, let's just have a meeting. And then they invite everybody to the meeting. So I think it's just become the go-to solution, and we really need to question that going forward.
Dana, thank you so much for coming in. It's been very interesting.
Thank you, Carol.
And enlightening.